good.
So we'll call the meeting to order. A quorum is present. Majority vote, there are 4 of us here, so you need to have, on various votes, the majority is 3 out of 4. We're here to hear Mr. Emerson's situation and application for a variance. And the way we normally do that is we'll allow, make whatever presentation you want, and then we may ask you questions or whatever. One thing, these decisions, there's a series of criteria, and some of them are listed on the application that you completed. And in each case, the board has to decide whether you've met the burden of proof on each one of these issues. So if you don't meet it, then we're not authorized to determine that you've met the criteria. So you kind of have to come forward with adequate evidence. So for example, we have to find that there's sufficient evidence to support the decision. And what I'll do is, first thing I'd like to do is allow you to make whatever presentation you'd like on this.
Okay. So I trust that everybody's got the material, so you can see the layout of the property with the variance and without the variance. If you look at that property map, you'll see that there's already a parking area that was there when we purchased the property. I think that parking area had already been laid out with I guess probably an assumption by the original builder that they would put a garage there. They had full intention to do something in that area. When they built that house, there was no 30-foot boundary variant at that time. It was set back further. So when they put that parking area in, for sure it would have made sense that they could have kept the driveway in the location that it was, that they built it to, and they still would have had room to turn around without actually impacting, the front of the house and being up on the front property. So, when we bought that property, I'll be honest, we moved back from Illinois. I had no idea that there was some 30-foot, it looked like it was already laid out for a garage there. So I intended at some point in time to put a garage in that same location. And then when I started looking into this with, Dusty, I had Dusty come down and kind of lay the property lines out for me so I'd have a better idea of where I could place the garage specifically. And he said that, well, there's we got to put this stake right out here. And I was like, oh, why there? We've got a lot of property left here. And he said, well, there's a 30-foot boundary line. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I started looking things over, and, if you look at that piece of, if you look at the property map itself, we have a leach field that's already in place, and there's a septic tank that's already in place. And when they laid this property out, they put the house in the location that they did, I think with a full intention of being able to put that garage initially right where that parking area is. The only option, there's really no good option other than a variance in my opinion, because the only other area you could put a garage would be in the front yard, in the front doorway. And if we do that, then you have a garage that's literally blocking the front of the house. And I think the impact on value of the home with a garage sitting literally in the front property is going to be pretty high to devalue. There's nothing appealing about driving into the driveway and seeing a garage sitting in front of the house like that. If I move the garage to the location that I can put it in right now for the 30-foot boundary limit, the driveway will have to completely move over, because the way that the driveway is positioned, it's kind of hard to tell in that, you know, in that little map, but if you look at the pictures that I sent, you can see how the driveway flows right into that parking area now, which is where the garage would be with the 15-foot variance. If you don't allow for a 15-foot variance, it pushes that garage right out to the walkway. And, you know, the driveway, to have the garage at an angle, the driveway will be off to the right now. So there's a bunch of trees and there's a little bit of a retaining wall. Those trees would have to come down, we'd have to move the driveway over, fill that whole area in so that you could actually drive into the garage and have an area to turn around in. And that's also gonna impact the whole front property. Putting it out back, there is a little bit of an area that goes around the house, but you can see that the well is right there. And that well in that house is already on that 30-foot property line. It's like right on top of it. So there's very little room to go down around the back of the house as it sits right now. And in which case, again, we would have to move the whole driveway over to the right side of the property and build a driveway that went in and around the back. That would be very expensive to do. So I mean, I've looked it all over in various ways to try to build it, and because the property, the garage, the driveway is roughly at a 6-degree angle, inclination all the way up, we already get a lot of water flow naturally. If I don't angle the garage, everything's just gonna wanna flow into the garage. It's just gonna be a stop, a catch-all right in front of my front property. I mean, that I could probably orientate it so that it was facing right up the driveway. But if I do that, I'm gonna have to do a lot of modification to my whole property to get the water to flow out around it naturally. Because right now it wants to flow right down the driveway, everything would wanna go right into the garage. So in the wintertime, that would be a real challenge for ice. I mean, as it is right now, you know, I'm gonna have to do some groundwork to that area, that pad area for a garage regardless, just to kind of get some of the water to go around it. But if we put the garage there, it's just going to want to stop everything, and we'll have an ice skating rink in that area all the time because we're at a low point. When you drive into Dewdrop, we're the furthest house back, and we are the lowest piece of property. We're the furthest house in the back. I don't know if you've driven down just to take a look or not, if you had time to, but you'd see that we've got a pretty long driveway in. And the other reason, you know, the other impact financially, if we put the garage way out back, beyond just building a driveway around the house and trying to figure out how to get the driveway around the house while, you know, being within the boundary lines, is you know, to run electricity, I plan on keeping the garage separated from the house because I use it for business too. It'll be my office, and for tax purposes, I want to have it on a separate, you know, electric source so I can keep track of that. I'd have to put in another pole, maybe even 2, to get it out back. That would be obviously expensive, putting in more poles, running down my property. I'd have to figure out how to get them on the property too, so they didn't just stick out in the middle of the property. It's, you know, for a 15-foot variance, and the fact that if you look at the pictures I sent, that area is already cleared out. I'm not cutting down trees to get a 15-foot variance. It's only one corner of the garage that would be over that boundary line. It's not the whole garage pushed back. The neighbor that is the closest to me, he has no problem with it. It seems like a reasonable request at this point from my position, you know, without having huge impact financially, or even an impact on just the whole layout of the property. Unfortunately, it was built the way that it was when there was, again, no boundary limit like this, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm the purchaser that didn't know that this was the case.
I thought I knew all the road, but where is this Dewdrop?
You know, if you go down 235,
Yeah.
in the water district,
Yes, yeah.
so in Brazier's,
Yeah.
Brazier's got his trap place right there. We're the very next road on the right.
Oh, okay, okay, thanks.
So not far, just like, you know, it's like 2 miles down on 235 on the right. I mean, are there any questions for me based off of looking at it?
Let me, yeah, well, let me do this first. This is the form of the notice of that we would fill out to give you the notice of our decision. And we're gonna try to do that tonight. So I filled in your name and all the particulars. And I'm just going to, and maybe we can walk through with you this form so you can see what we're, and then you can, oh, you got it already. All right. So go to page 5. You see on that page, it says number 4, variance from dimensional standards for practical difficulty. Okay. And then you see, now this is a form from the Maine Municipal Association, which provides teaching and best practices for boards of appeals and others in the state. So we have to kind of go down here and fill in the facts in our finding and our conclusions of law. So if you go to, you see there under where it says for variance, then it says to the board, please state the facts that strict application of the ordinance to the applicant and the property would or would not cause a practical difficulty. So then it says 5.1. The strict application of the ordinance to the applicant and the applicant's property would or would not cause a practical difficulty. And then there are 2 under A and B under that, which are the standards. So, and now we have to find some facts and meet the burden of proof to show that. So for example, A, the strict application either does or does not preclude your ability, in this case, to pursue a use permitted in the district in which the property is located. So what would we put down there for the facts that would support that? Now, before you I'm going to give you some time to think about that in a minute, but I want to see if any of the other board members have any questions, or if should we just proceed this way? Is this workable?
Yeah,
Just going down the list?
I think so.
Okay, good.
I mean, I think that's the.
Does that work for you, Leroy, too?
But that, yeah.
Just going down the list? Okay, so, and if you want to think about that one or let it stew a little bit, we can jump to some of the other ones. Would you like to take on some other ones first?
I mean, for 5.1A.
Yeah,
If I build this garage without the variance,
right.
it immediately applies to B. So yes, I can put it in that space. As you can see, it will take that space up. It'll take up all of the space that we put our vehicles in right now. It would take that all up, which means our turnaround and our front property will no longer be yard and we'll have to actually cut trees and move that whole driveway over to the left. So, there's a significant economic impact because the garage isn't going to be cheap to build anyway. And, we're gonna cut down trees. I'm going to have to, take down a lot of actually really healthy oak trees to move that driveway and bring in, I have no idea how many yards of gravel, because again, the way that the driveway is now, to the left, there's a big low spot. It's filled with, ferns, it's kind of swampy. We would have to probably build that up 4 feet high of material. And, we would have to completely reroute the driveway in a fashion to be able to actually, come into the garage. Because the way the driveway is right now, you wouldn't be able to get in and out. In fact, it would be, you wouldn't be able to plow, you wouldn't be able to move, the driveway just wouldn't be functional that way. We would have to move the driveway. And I would have to take out my front yard and turn it into a church turnaround. Backing in and out of the garage, it would just take the front property which I think in the end, if I ever had to sell the property, you know, it's not what the intention was when they built it. They wouldn't have put the house where they put it. And they wouldn't have put the septic and the leach field where they put it if this, I just don't see how they would have done this with the intention of building a garage, which I think it's pretty clear from my side where they put that turnaround or the parking area, there was intent for a garage to be there at some point in time.
Let me ask you this and further into that. You've got the garage angled pretty much the same angle
Yeah,
in either alternative.
yep,
So I'm sure you explored having the back side of the garage run parallel to the side property line.
yeah,
And then having it up farther so that you don't have to do anything but just put it there.
yeah, so if you're thinking about just flipping it this way
Yeah,
and moving it up,
Yep.
so
then you got the garage, you got turnaround and everything else. You got the driveway, you don't have to do anything.
this, if I put the garage in this area, like that, so it's flipped like this, which I could do, I could put the back of it so
Yeah.
that it's facing straight, but then everything is going to flow into the garage, because of the way the driveway is right now, all the water flows into it. I would have to do a lot of work to get water to go out around it and not have everything.
So where's
flow.
it gonna flow this way?
So in this way, we can create a ditch all along here that will just take it that way.
Yep.
And not have it all flow in. If I put it this direction, we'll have to ditch here and we'll have to ditch here to keep it from going straight into the garage.
I'm missing that. If you take the back here
Yeah.
and move it so that it's right on that line.
Okay. So at that point, the only problem is going to be the actual turning around. It'll just, when we turn around, because this kind of throws us, this doesn't give you a good idea of the length. So if this is 30 feet, a vehicle is 20 feet, right?
Okay.
Backing out of that garage 20 feet, there's not gonna be 20 feet here, because this is a 28 by 28 garage. So if I flip that and I put this back right on that property line,
Yeah,
the front of this is gonna be right here.
yep,
I don't have 20 feet any longer. From here, from the front of this to this front property, I will be backing onto my
but what if you
backyard all the
move
time.
the garage forward?
There's a whole bunch of trees and everything up in this area.
All right.
I mean, I could do it, and I'd have to dig this all out, because it gets very steep really quick. So we would have to dig this out. There might even be ledge in there, I'm not sure. I know there's a lot of big rock, but we wouldn't know until we started digging if there's ledge, and then I'd probably have to blast ledge for a frost
Or
wall.
how do you know that in the case where it is now?
Because this area has already been dug at one point in time and filled back in.
But this part here hasn't?
No, it hasn't, no, because that's actual,
That's the driveway though, right? You're showing that.
this is just the parking area.
That's the parking area.
Yep, and if you look, is there a picture of the parking?
Yeah,
So, is there?
yeah, I got all these.
So right here, this is the edge of the property.
Okay, so let's just orient it.
Yep. Right here, see all this?
Yes,
This is all, this part of it's never been tampered with. So there's all these big rocks all along here that were moved out when they brought this driveway in.
yeah,
My concern is, and this goes straight up. This is kind of a hard view, but this is, up at a fairly good angle. We would have to dig this all out to level it off. And there could be ledge in there because there's all these rocks that you see all around here came out of this property when they made the foundation for the house.
all right, so why don't you go explain some of that? So my question was, can you put the back of the house, the back of the garage,
Yeah, so
on that side property line, where the parking area is showing now?
If we do that, which we could, I suppose we could do that, we could move it straight up.
Where's the garage supposed to go in the picture here?
Right here, this area right here. So this stake that I have right in this picture would be this front corner
Okay,
if it's set back 15 feet. If it's not set back 15 feet, this comes all the way up to here in that angle, which is what you see here. He's asking if I flip it so that the back of the garage is on this line, and then I move it up so that we would be able to turn around in this area. So I could do that, okay, but I'd have to dig this whole area out. And this is kind of a hillside. There's a bunch of big rock in here already that was moved in there. I don't know if there's ledge in there. I don't know.
that's the only question I had in looking at this at home, is that, if you stay within the variance, why couldn't you square it? And you That's right.
Yeah, that's what he's asking.
And then you square that, where this would be the front here now.
Yep.
So you can go this way into it.
Yeah, and we'd have to back out. So now, if you put that on the line,
Okay.
and if you think about this being 28 feet deep, the front corner of this is still gonna be somewhere up in this section.
Yeah.
This is my front property. So a 20-foot vehicle, I mean, my truck is 20 foot long.
But you're parking there now,
I park in there, but I park way up in.
so you're over the
Oh, yeah.
setback.
Yeah, if you look, I mean, we're way up in, here. So I park with my vehicles way up in this area.
Right, okay.
Because, it was already there.
This is the entrance,
You can see, so this is
So go ahead and answer, Leroy.
Yeah.
this is the main entrance into it?
No, this is the driveway here.
Oh, okay, and this is the turnaround,
Yeah, so you can see we already get up on the property.
yeah.
It's kind of, a picture looks panoramic, but you can see backing up, we already.
Where would the front of the garage be, front door?
The front door would be right here. If there was
This way here?
yep, and kind of at an angle.
There.
Yeah. That was my plan, was to have it at an angle.
Sure,
Otherwise, if you run it across the property line, it actually will tip back and the garage will kind of face the house. It won't be flush. Because that property line's at an angle.
Yeah,
So when you flip this, it's actually gonna be kind of facing the house.
yeah,
And you would be backing into this area all the time at that point. Even if I move it up there, I'm gonna still be backing into the front property. And right, like as I said, right now, we park way up in we're past the boundary line.
so you like that, it's most practical for you, is that to be able to have it at this angle here, in the driveway,
Yep.
in the driveway garage.
Yeah, because then the biggest vehicle, we can park on the furthest side and still have the room I need to turn around. And even now, I'm still on the property. I still get up on my front yard, but if I don't put it there, then I'm always going to be driving. We're just gonna have to we're gonna have to move the front property to be more open for a turnaround and just lose some of our front yard space is all. And it does get the garage very close. If I dig up this area, which is going to be more costly, and I don't know if there's ledge in there, I have to suspect that there is because there's so much rock around this property. I mean, you can't put a shovel in anything without hitting stone. And which I think that's why there's so much stone all around it already. That could be expensive because I have to put a retaining wall in regardless. Because of the run of the property, this garage isn't just a slab. I'm going to have to build a 4-foot retaining wall to keep the garage in place because everything wants to flow downhill.
Which way is the water run? You said it ran into your garage.
It runs right down the driveway right now. So I'm gonna have to, as it is, I'm going to have to dig a channel to try to divert water around it. We can't turn it this way. Because if I turn it this way, it blocks my leach field. It blocks access to my septic and my leach field.
It blocks access and that you can't get in here.
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult to get in and get access because my septic tank is right down in here. And I need to leave access to the septic to get it pumped out.
Yeah, so the garage would be way too close to that.
So I'm trying to keep it at an angle also to maintain all that access. I'm trying to push it back to kind of maintain access to that because it's a 16-year-old house now. I've already had the septic, I pump the septic every 2 years, with my family size, so if the leach field goes, we're gonna have to be able to get in there. At some point. So yeah, I suppose I could turn it, sir, like you're suggesting,
Yeah.
and move it up. But I think I'm going to have to do a lot more excavation and work, just as you can see in that area. That's all.
yeah, but the trees are young trees, there's not much in.
No, I'm just, this area would have to be dug up and I don't know if there's ledge in there or not. And it will have the garage kind of facing at an odd angle. I also look at this from a value, like, my property is an investment. If I have to sell my house and I'm forced to do something that is really kind of unappealing just to have a garage, I mean, I need to have the garage because I need to have the office space due to my family size. We need to give up a room. And, I've got a lot of equipment that you can't even see. Maybe Maybe in this picture, you can see there's, well, not even just that, but that camper is mine, and there's a trailer up here with snowmobiles on it that are just sitting outside.
I had a question for you.
Huh?
I had a question for you. If you did move it, it cost you, it'd be a hardship as far as the cost. How would it look? Not,
So this, if I keep it on the boundary line, you can imagine tipping this around because of the angle of that, it's gonna be facing kind of at an angle back at the house.
the width, was it like?
But you can make it parallel, you can still make it parallel to the house and not make it right on the square with the property line, right?
Which would be the entrance, the front of the garage?
I don't know if I could make it parallel or not. I'd have to get Dusty to kind of
Now, what do
play
you,
with that. I would have to see it, I'd have to see it lined out with stakes to see, you know, what angle it would be at.
why are you moving over, because of, to get into the tank?
Yeah, so I just wanna set it back so I can keep all
Right,
this
that
area.
would be the most practical, you're right.
Mhm.
If you and Russ were talking about it, I guess you're gonna turn it around,
Yes.
and it would still give you enough room to get in.
Oh, yeah, it would. If I turned it that way, it
But
would
when you
give
turn
me,
it, that means you gotta take it here.
yes, to move it up, to give me the space that I need to try to have as much turnaround. I'm gonna still be getting on my front yard. There's no way around it. If I stay on that 30-foot, and we've already staked that out, it doesn't matter where I put it on the 30-foot line, it doesn't matter how I orientate it, I lose my front property. My lawn is going to become now the turnaround space. I'm trying to keep from having to lose front yard space. My front yard space is already at a premium because of the 30-foot. I mean, we have a very small amount of front yard space to begin with. I don't wanna lose more of it just because of the garage position if I can help it. And it just seems to me that the way that they initially built this whole layout, because I haven't done any of this is just how it was when I moved in. They had put enough material in that far enough that to me, it looks like they were intending putting a garage here at some point in time, without being worried about a variance in any way. And I suppose if it was built in 2004, they probably didn't consider it a 30-foot boundary.
I don't know what the setback was in 2004, I think it was still the same setback. I think it was still 30 feet.
2004, was it 30?
I think so, I don't think they made a lot of changes because that's,
I think Dusty told me it was 15 feet then, that it was 2010 that there was a change. Is that correct?
That I don't know, I'm not up on it.
It's just odd,
Then,
it's odd that they did so much work for that parking space, the way that they did it.
okay. So, let's come back to that.
Can I ask one,
Sorry,
one quick
please,
question, and I
please.
think you already answered it, but, I think you had answered it because of the length of your truck, but is there any, I'm just looking at, the space here, and if there's a possibility, and I think you already answered it, but that you could do a different shape.
Yeah, that's what.
Is that what you're talking about before, that needs to
Yeah.
be at least, your truck is 20 feet long, so it needs
Yes.
to be at least, okay.
So if I make it longer,
Mhm.
then what I would have to do is keep the garage door on this end and drive in this way.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
I get
it would work, but I don't know how practical it is for two vehicles, because then you lose, the reason it's 28-foot square is because I've kind of figured out, how much room I need for the tractor I have, the lawnmower that I have, and the two vehicles that I keep inside. If I make it long, sure, I can put all that stuff back, but I don't know that I'd be able to put two vehicles side by side at that point and get in between them. It'd be long, it'd be narrow. I'd have the space, square footage would be the same, but it would be all, I don't know how practical it would be at that point, and you would be the door would be facing right straight up the driveway, and you'd be backing around in some sort of weird pattern to get back out the driveway that way. So we really need to be able to drive in the doors this way, back in front of the house in some fashion to get out the driveway, or I have to change the whole driveway routing to make something like that work, which I really don't. The driveway's long already, and I'm trying to keep costs down, wherever I can.
I get you.
Materials, as it is, just the groundwork to build this is already at, $12,000, so, because I need to have a frost wall due to the layout of the property, otherwise the garage someday will end up on my front yard, on my leach field.
Where's that frost wall going on here?
It's gonna go on this side of the garage. So there'll be a frost wall on this side because this is all downhill.
So is it separate from the pad?
No, it's attached to the pad. It's a 4-foot frost wall on the outside.
Yeah.
On the downhill side, there'll be a 4-foot frost wall to kind of keep, to retain.
That water's still gonna come in there, right?
No, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna run we've already got a bit of a trench here that's natural. It's
Yeah.
just kind of eroded on the driveway, build up
Right.
the driveway so it will continue to wanna go that direction.
Yeah.
And the plan is to dig like a little gutter
Yeah.
system that will, once it gets to this point,
Yeah.
it'll kind of run it under the driveway.
Yeah.
In a way. So we need to kind of keep that open to do that, so it's not running under the garage. If I moved it this way, then we would have to try to run it under the garage or do a perimeter drain. People don't generally do a perimeter drain with a garage, that's pretty expensive. So I'm trying to keep away from a perimeter drain. You do that for a basement that's open, you don't do it for a slab. And if I move it this way, the way you suggested, I'm not so worried about water running into the garage, obviously, any longer.
Right.
My problem is going to still be that I'm gonna be backing far more onto my property.
Unless you move it up a little bit, then you'd be backing into
We
that
should be
existing
backing in that
place.
area, yes.
Right.
So I'd have to get some estimates on digging that area all out and hope that there's no.
Why do you have to dig that out when, it's not much different from the driveway, is it?
No, it is. That gets steep. You can't tell on this picture, but that goes right up immediately.
I see.
So right from this edge, as soon as you step past this little bit, there's a little bit of a trench where the water flows,
Okay,
and then this immediately goes up. The property immediately just goes up.
okay,
So you'd have to probably dig 4 or 5 feet down to level it all out, to move it up like that.
okay,
It depends on how far up I had to go.
Yeah.
If I had to go up into that area, let's say 10 feet, just 10 feet of distance, I'd have to dig 5 feet down to keep that all level.
okay.
And especially to get a 4-foot frost wall in. I'd have to dig probably even a little deeper to keep it level in that area.
But if you're over there, that water's coming this way, it's not gonna
But I really don't want it going down the driveway.
Right,
So if I move it that way, now this trench that I'm gonna build to help divert water,
yeah,
it's gone, because the garage is in the middle of it. So I'd have to find a way to get water,
yeah, I'd go across that way.
yeah, I'd have to find a way to tip it so everything went down this way in front of the house.
Or over to the side.
That would be, so I'd have to run some sort of pretty unique gutter system to get it to go all around the house on that side. It actually is kind of a longer run than you can see here. It would probably all wanna still come back onto the front property,
Okay.
which I
Sandy,
do have a fair
any
amount of
questions?
water on now.
Do you have any questions at this point?
Well, it seems to me your presentation indicates that there are some alternatives.
Yep.
But that the economic costs, and physical costs, physical impact, are excessive.
For me, the only way to keep it even aesthetic, so functional and aesthetics is how I look at it. I need it to be functional. And if we have to sell the property someday, I'm looking at it from an aesthetic perspective. If I was a home buyer and the garage is at the angle that I've suggested with a 15-foot variance, everything about it flows properly, right? You can see yourself driving into the garage, you can see yourself backing out, you're not ruining your front yard, you're not constantly fixing the front yard in the spring, because you've got ruts and you're tearing it up all the time, turning around. If I angle the garage in any other way, yes, I can put a garage in place, but is it functional and is it is my return on investment going to be there? Because the garage is gonna cost me a lot of money. And I can tell you what I'm trying to build for it to be functional for my office space and to have a garage that I can keep that much equipment in and safe. Today is not cheap. So if I'm putting $90,000 into my property, which is what it will cost all said and done, then if it doesn't look appealing and I have to sell this property and I can't get what I got into it back out of it, which there's never a guarantee, don't get me wrong. But I can tell you that I looked at a lot of property and as a buyer, that, to me, would look effective, it looks functional, it lays out like you'd kind of expect. And when you look at houses all around here, they tend to angle a garage like that, so it looks like it's, you know, the property's rounded and it flows well. But beyond all that, I have to think about these things because of where the leach field is placed, where the septic is placed. I need to make sure that I can access all of them down the road. And I really don't want to get into a point where, you know, I've got excavators digging up half my property to just put this garage in. That's going to add, that'll definitely increase the cost well beyond what I'm estimated at right now. So, I mean, I could do other things. I know that I could put the garage right in front of the house. I mean, that's obviously an option, to move it right in front of the house. But I don't, and then I would have my whole turnaround where I park right now, right? And then we could make the argument that I could put it right in front of the house and I wouldn't lose where I'm parking right now. I'd just back out into that area, but I lose my whole front yard. And, I mean, if anybody that I know, I mean, if you drove into the house and you saw the house, now you can no longer see the house, you can only see the garage sitting like 10 feet in front of the house, because that's what it would be like 10 or 12 feet from the front door. That just looks odd. Everything about that looks odd for a resale perspective, and it is an investment.
Are you saying the alternative you have is, what is it, front of the house?
That, I think, for the best alternative, it's or I give up my front yard. I'm gonna give up part of my front yard either way. If I can't get the variance, I'm giving up my front yard space in some way, shape, or form. And I would probably go with what you suggested, to keep the majority of the front space, but I'm going to lose my front yard space, which I'm trying to keep. I'm trying to keep as much of that, because we don't have a lot of yard space there to begin with. What yard space we have out back, it gets wet pretty quick because we're the lowest spot on the street, on that road. So once you get outside of our, you know, we have a deck out back, it gets pretty wet very quick going further back. So I can't do a lot back there without bringing in huge amounts of earth. The only yard we have right now that is open and useful is the front yard, that if I put the garage where you're suggesting, we're going to lose it for turnaround purposes. And, you know, we don't have a lot of yard space right now. We've got a lot of woods and a lot of swamp out behind us. The river, the brook that goes underneath 235, that you see goes into that marsh area, further on down, it comes right up behind my house. And it's wet out behind me. They built up just enough, put me up in just a high enough area that we don't have any, like, a wet basement. But our area is wet because we're the lowest property on that street, on that road. So I don't wanna lose my front yard space if I can help it, because that's really the only dry yard space that we have for a family.
Peter, could you briefly sum up the hardship that you would endure?
So, I mean, cost is the biggest one. Cost to build it in any other way is the biggest hardship. From a resale value perspective, and from a material handling, driveway functionality, you know, we'd have to do a lot to get it, and you know, get it in there in the way that you're suggesting. I'd have to bring in material to change my front yard out a little bit, so we had something that was not going to constantly erode. I'd have to bring in more material to make a turnaround in my front yard, some sort of turnaround there. And I may, in the end, even have to move the driveway over some. So there are 2 trees that would probably have to go to shift the driveway a little bit, just to make it more effective driving in and out for the turnaround. If I don't get the garage, you know, if I choose just not to build it because I'm concerned about the resale value having the garage in that location, which is an alternative. Maybe I just say no, it's not worth the value, it's not worth the investment because I won't get the value back out of it, or I'm concerned about that. Then, you know, my equipment that I have continues to be higher maintenance because it's constantly outside, which, you know, that's not how I was brought up. You take care of your stuff, you have to keep it inside, get a place for it, so, you know, it's really all financial. Even if I look at it from an aesthetic perspective, it's financial because, I mean, I don't know, if you were buying a house and, you you know, you look at the way that I had the garage laid out, it just flows like it should. That's how, I know Mitchell Mank, who built the house. Mitchell was the person that built it initially. And, you know, I asked him why he had such a big parking area. And he said that because he was gonna put a garage there at some point in time. He never got to it because they didn't live there long enough to do it. So, you know, I was expecting that I would be able to do it with a little bit, I guess, a little more freedom than what I know I have now.
So it looks like, to me, it looks like number one, permitted use, the strict application of this ordinance to the property precludes the ability of the petitioner to pursue the permitted use. And so I think the operational word for number one is precludes, and I know what precludes mean, but I wanted to look it up, so I knew exactly what the definition was for this. And the definition is to prevent from happening or to make impossible. And so those are two slightly different variations, right? To prevent from happening, it sounds like it's possible, but I
Yes.
think it's arguable that, I think it's definitely arguable that it would be preventative because of enormous cost and then because of the absurdity of putting a garage directly in front of your house. So I just wanted to go over that. That's the way I'm thinking about number one, is that I think we could get there, or at least I think I could get there because of the, I don't think it's impossible as we've heard, but I do think it could prevent it from happening because of all of the things you just said. It seems impractical to invest that much money in a garage that would sit directly in front of your house.
So the notes I have on this are, there are alternatives, but they are more expensive and less attractive. The biggest factor is cost, and then I put your quote in, it's really all finances.
Yeah.
That sound about right for, we'll figure out which one we strike through, but just if we get the facts part down, that would be good. Then for B, I apologize for the numbering, it was a formatting, and I meant to fix that last time, but anyway, so 5.1B, all I inserted there was CA above, because that strict application does or does not result in significant economic injury to the petitioner, which is where you were going, Natasha.
I think the answer to B is clear, as you say.
Yeah. Okay.
We have to work at trying to gain.
Yeah.
You're talking about the undesirable change?
No, it says 5.1B, Leroy, on page 5. Oh yeah, you're going down.
By what now?
I'm going down let me give you this.
To the notice of decision variance, 5 pages, 6 pages, 7
Yeah,
pages.
I sent here, this is what I'm going down there now. So this is, basically, I'm trying to fill this out as we go along, so we can reach a decision tonight. So this is, the form that we've been using based on the
Do
mass.
we have a copy of that?
And I'm gonna, no, it's not in there, so I'm gonna give this one to you.
Oh, okay.
So maybe a couple extra times. So now, I filled out his name and everything, address. And now we have to go down, we're under 4 here, because this is the variance from dimensional standards for practical difficulty. So we were just talking about this question in 5A and 5B, so we talked about that, so now we go down the next one. So that's the order. Well, how high is this? It looked to me like there was a discrepancy in what the plan said and what the documents
Yeah, I
said.
think that, initially we thought we were going to be at about 26 feet, but it's gonna be a little bit higher than that for the angle, the pitch of the roof, because it's 12 pitch, it's
Yeah.
gonna be a little bit taller. And due to the way that the, garage is going to be built for the doors that I want and the ceiling height that I need on the first floor, due to the vehicle size and just functional use downstairs, it's going to be a little bit higher. They're gonna put, the footings that come in around the slab to build off of are a little higher than we initially thought they were going to be. So it's 2710.
Okay, so that's what I put on
Yeah.
I used the
26
higher
foot.
number.
Yeah, 26 foot is what Dusty had originally had. And we just kind of estimated without having the people come in on site and look at how it needed to be built. Once we started talking about a frost wall, and then, you know, because of the low-lying area that it is and the ice that builds up there, we went with an 8-inch slab instead of a 6-inch. And the footings added in to build the wall height, it ended up being a little taller in the end. So that's all the material that I provided.
All right, so let's go down to 5.2a. The need for variance is or is not due to the unique circumstances of the property, and not to the general condition of the neighborhood. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Now, part of it, the general condition of the neighborhood, for example, is the soil condition and all that. So it's not necessary. So that would, and generally, that doesn't meet the criteria. What might be helpful is the way your property is structured, is, you know, the boundary lines.
Yeah, so this is something Dusty and I, you know, thought when we were doing the boundary lines, you know, he said to me, he said, man, this is a weird piece of property, and it is. So it's very narrow where we are. And I think that's an important piece to point out. Again, you know, Mitchell had built this turnaround or this parking area, and I would really, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Dusty said that in 2004, it wasn't a 30-foot setback, that something has happened since that time. So he put the house where he put it, with the leach field and the well where he put it. If there was a 30-foot, and I mean, I don't wanna, you guys know better than me, I'm no expert, but if you look at the property, just as an example, I'll show it all of you. If 30-foot was in place, you know, look where the house is, it's sitting on the 30-foot.
Right,
It's, I mean, how can that be? They set the house right on the 30-foot and the well is literally right up against the boundary line.
the boundary line, yeah.
And the septic is over the 30-foot. You know, and Dusty's already mapped this all out, we know this is true, so, I mean, how did they get by with the septic being over the 30-foot, and how did they get by with the house
The
being over?
septic doesn't regulate the septic, but it does regulate the house.
Yeah, and the house is right on top of it,
Right.
maybe even a little bit over, so
Yeah.
Dusty kind of looked at that and said, this is odd, and, you know, looking at the layout of the driveway and the parking area, Dusty also said, maybe we ought to talk to Mitchell, and,
Well, I think,
but anyway, so it's narrow.
yeah,
It's narrow, so it, you know, the housing and the position of everything with those narrow boundary markers, it kind of makes it very difficult now with the 30-foot boundary to do much else up in this area because we don't have a lot of space. Just,
Natasha, Leroy, Sandy, any questions on that, on this one?
On,
On A, 5.2a, I've written down boundary lines are narrow and unusual shaped.
no, I think it is due to unique circumstances and not due to general conditions.
Okay, yeah.
I agree, and I just, as a note, I'm trying to figure out about
Yeah.
so it looks like the newest version of the ordinances were adopted June 16th, 2005, but I don't have any information
Right.
about what was there before that, but that, you know, I know Dusty, and I, you know, when I had a private law practice, I used to use him, and I imagine he would be correct, but it might be something we would need to know, if it was different, but I do agree that, it is the unique circumstances of the property and not the general condition of the neighborhood.
Leroy, you have any questions on this topic?
okay.
5.2b, the granting of a variance will or will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will or will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of abutting properties. And we have testimony, or at least a letter from your neighbors indicating that they agree to it and they don't believe it will.
So I think the applicable verbiage there would be will not promote.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put in neighbor testimony. Or neighbor documents.
And I'll just point out that for the past week, when I've had this notice sent out, I've only had 2 neighbors come and ask about this, and both have had no issues. Mark Gifford and Cindy Foreman. Both have said they have no issues with it, and hope that will be done.
Okay, so that's verbally,
Well, that's the whole neighborhood at that point. So, because Andy Chapman is right next to me. It was really only him that there would be any kind of impedance or impact on. And Mark is up above,
Yep.
and Cindy's the first property on the road.
okay. So 5.2C, the practical difficulty is or is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner.
But that's where I think also the issue of the ordinance, I mean, I don't know, and maybe you know more about that one than I do, but does it make a difference if when the prior owner, set the house where it is and the driveway where it is, et cetera? Does that make a difference if the ordinance didn't, if it was a 15-foot setback or 30 versus 30 foot, or if it was?
Well, on the other, I'm wondering where else they would have put the house in the septic field.
Oh, okay,
It does raise a question about something else in what you said and what Max said, which is that it's not in the shoreline zone, but it sounds like it. If it's that what,
Well, I mean, they could have put it back further,
Yeah.
but you can see, so if you can't see, but, well, maybe one of those pictures does show, actually.
There was a picture looking back at the house from the driveway, looking down. Yes, so right here, that property just goes down.
okay,
So, I mean, the backyard, which is just beyond this point and
Yeah.
beyond the edge of the house, is probably 12 feet below, maybe
Yeah.
even more, 12 feet below what you can see right
so
there.
that's why they set the house. right
Yeah,
there.
because otherwise you'd have had to fill in so much material to push the house back. I mean, it would have been very expensive. We do have a walkout basement, a daylight basement too back there
Yeah.
going out to it. But you had to build up a lot of material to get that whole property, you know, cause it falls off real quick. So that's why it gets wet. Out here in the tree line, all that out there is wet all year.
Okay, so I'm looking for suggestions of what I write down for C here, guys. What are the facts that we find?
I'll tell
I
you
would
what,
say that something to the effect that the residents, decided on the lot, due to, topographical, circumstances.
Okay,
very good.
okay. No other feasible alternative to variance is available to the petitioner. So we're gonna, that sort of goes back to
C1.
5.1A, right?
Yeah, I'd say C,
C5.
permitted use and economic injury.
Right, the economic,
Yeah.
economic,
C5.1A. Granting of the variance will or will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment.
will not, that's right.
yeah,
And saying, it minimizes,
I think it minimizes
Changes.
more digging and
Yeah.
changes.
changes to the property.
Yeah, and I think it minimizes the environmental effects, basically, I mean, right? I would imagine that's not good for,
Now let's go to F. The property is or is not located in whole or in part within the shoreline area. Max, you said it is not.
The
it's not,
The project area is not in the shore. It is partly in the shoreline, but you have to go to the very back of the property. And I have the map. Show.
Yeah, it's a ways back.
The reason that criteria is there is you'd otherwise be subject to shoreline zoning.
Right.
Right, but if I.
And we have to go into that.
This is the resource protection guy.
we've done it
He
before.
is down here. And then the shoreline is over here, 250 feet from the street. This property doesn't even go here, from what you're seeing.
Okay?
So it is technically so the property is technically in the shoreline, but it is far from this actual project. That's the shoreline
Okay,
property. We're talking 75 feet. We're talking 75 feet.
Yeah, we have to walk a ways actually to get to the river or stream back there.
Yeah, but we're back. If that property is in the shoreline zone, then you gotta go by the shoreline zone. And this whole thing is inapplicable. You have to go through a whole nother process.
I trust you. You can show me.
This is the property. Shoreline is back of the property. When
Okay.
all the way.
Yeah, and again, Dusty has been on the property and he's given me the document initially and he had checked off that it wasn't the shoreline zone either.
We have conflicting evidence. Which we can decide upon.
Yes, in the memo, I should have said that the project location is not in the shoreline, but there's so many properties that have this type of issue where there's a little corner that's in it, and technically that's properties in the shoreline, even though the project would be nowhere near it. I think there was I think when we had the Benner case with a variance, it was also in the shoreline zone, but it was nowhere close to where the actual project was going to be. It'd be a similar
I don't
case.
remember that it was in the shoreline zone, I think, but it could be. I just don't think we understood it.
Or it might have been,
Let's see, what's the log on here?
the password?
Marlboro Town Office. What's the password?
The password to the town's Wi-Fi?
Because I gotta go to the zoning ordinance. I mean, if this is shoreline zone, then we have to.
Do you want the actual Waldeboro
Have you got
ordinance?
the board? Yeah, let's have the ordinance. That's what I was trying to get. Thanks, that's great. What is shoreline? All right, so we're gonna interpret property to mean project. Otherwise, this variance isn't available. I don't think the practical difficulty variance is available. available if it, and I don't know whether it means property or project. So we can put in the decision that we're interpreting it that way. Okay, so I'm gonna say property located in whole or in part. Property. So I'm just gonna say project is not.
Sorry, I'm just reading and I'm reading on my phone because my computer died. From using Zoom all day, I assume, and I haven't plugged it in. I'm just trying to make sure. What is the what's the body of water that's 250 feet from,
What is the exact?
or do you, I mean, is it a stream, is it a,
It's a stream, yes.
it's fresh water?
Yes.
Within 250 feet.
It is the,
Non-horizontal, within 75 feet horizontal distance of the normal high water line of the stream as defined. So it might be 75 feet if it's a stream.
I think it is.
well, this,
Oh, is that 75 feet or is it 250 feet?
in Waldeboro, it's 250 feet regardless.
Oh, okay.
That's what the
On all
shoreline
bodies
is.
of water?
Hmm?
On all bodies of water?
Bodies of water that we identify.
What's that?
Bodies of water that we identify. It is
Oh, I
mostly wetlands, great ponds,
Gotcha.
things of that
But
nature.
it says in the applicability, it says, sorry, it's on my phone, but it says, it says 250 feet for all these things. And then it says, and within 75 feet horizontal distance of the normal high water line of a stream as defined. So, and I hadn't looked at that, but doesn't that mean,
The whole shoreline is 250, but there are different parts of what you can do in different sections. Like, you can't build within 100 feet of the water line.
okay,
Resource protection is probably more strict.
I don't know if this would be relevant, but clearly, putting the garage, as proposed, wouldn't encroach any further on the stream or the lake or whatever it is than the house already is.
No, that's right.
And I think the stream.
oh, okay, so the question is really whether the project that's proposed is far from 250 feet.
It's,
And
the
so if
question is
I own
which
five-
setback,
Yeah.
which variance is available.
Okay, and so
And
like,
so you got 4 different variances.
if you were Irving, paper and you owned half the state of Maine, for instance, and that happened to be part of Waldeboro and your land went up 500 miles, I would think 500 miles away, you could, well, I guess it wouldn't be a Waldeboro anymore, but you know what I mean? If you had a large piece of land, I don't think it would preclude you from putting, I would imagine that would be impractical to say you can't build a driveway if it's a 10-mile strip of land or something that you own, correct? I mean, I don't know, maybe it is supposed to do that, I imagine that's not the intent,
And
but,
just by the way, this is I'm probably gonna mess it up, the 11th Sailor Brook.
11 Cellar,
Oh.
11 Cellar, that's what it is, yes, yeah, it is 11 Cellar. Yes.
so I would be, I'm okay with it being the project, especially considering it's not even close. I think if it were closer, then I would wanna talk to the municipal association or, but the other aspect that would worry me, I guess, is that if you were able to raise the funds and years later build a garage, it could end up being more detrimental to the shoreline zone.
Well,
Then
runoff, I mean,
this
how would
is-
it change runoff and, other things, I guess if you start digging around on the property and changing the grade of the property, I don't know what that does.
I don't either, but I would imagine, personally, I would just imagine that would be worse, so I don't,
Well, and if I was to put it down back, let's say I finally, maybe I
decided to spend a truckload of money and put the driveway out around the house and put the garage down back, that would get me a lot closer to the shoreline actually, so, you know, that would really be my alternative. But the best alternative to a functional layout would actually, beyond what I've proposed here, would actually be to move that out back, which would cost a lot of money to do, but that would be the best functional layout, because then I would have all the turnaround space, it wouldn't be impacting the view of the house looking out.
It would have less of an economic, it would cost a lot, and it would be, but it would have less of an economic impact long term.
Yeah, or even on the resale. So the resale, when you look at it from a real resale perspective, which is the main driver for making the garage at that corner, having it kitty cornered like that for flow in the layout, would be to put it down back. But putting it down back, I'd have to move it way down back, and yeah, for sure then I'm digging into that wetland area that's behind me and building that up and bringing in a lot more material.
Any more on that? I wrote down, I mean, we'll vote on it, but I just put in note for the project is not, that's that. We could get challenged on it or not, as the case may be. Okay, let's go to C1, the variance is or is not being granted for establishment of any uses prohibited by the ordinance. And I think we can agree that that's the case, okay, so it is not being granted. Is being granted for establishment. Yeah, it's not. Okay. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
C2, subject to the other conclusion, Proposed structure or use would meet all the standards of the ordinance except for the specific provisions which have created the nonconformity or from which relief is sought. So, does it comply with the applicable district? And that's Article 3F7, which I sent you, which is the rural district, and I think it complies with that.
I agree.
Yes, Andy? Leroy? Does comply. All right, performance standards under schedule of uses, this we're relying on Max to tell us. Does it comply with those applicable standards? That's Article 3G3.
Yes.
Okay. Does comply?
Part of the application you should have is the building permit application.
Yep.
That Stan, I had to just take the mask off, so but
I hear
It's
you.
brutal.
Stan Waltz did review it, and just a quick note, he does say in that application that it has to go to the planning board. He meant to say Board of Appeals.
Right.
That's corrected.
And then the last bullet does or does not comply with the dimensional requirements of, put that, that's Article 3H. I believe it does.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Now, so we've got, so let's, I'm gonna go back in reverse order. Okay. So I'm gonna do F, B, now let's go over here, then I'll just, we'll take the votes, okay? But I'm gonna leave, I'm not gonna go to the 5.1 yet. So let's go to, 5.2A, the need for the variance is or is not due to the unique circumstances of the property. And we're saying it is, correct, everybody?
I lost you, but
Okay,
wrong page.
I'm on page 5 now.
Yep.
And I'm 5.2A, so what's that?
Okay.
The need for the variance is or is not due to the unique circumstances of the property, and is or is not due to the general condition of the neighborhood. So I think what we said, what I heard you say, the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and is not due to the general condition of the neighborhood. Is that right?
I agree.
Sandy, yes?
Yeah.
Aaron, yes? Okay. Need for variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and is not due to the general condition of the neighborhood. Okay. B, granting of a variance will or will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. That we said will not.
Yep.
And will or will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use of market value. No other feasible alternative variances available to the petitioner. I think that, is that what everybody agreed? Yeah, so I'm striking another. E, the granting of a variance will or will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment. I think we all said will not. Yeah. Okay. Property is not located in whole or in part within the shoreline areas as described in Title 38-435. The project is not. Okay, then we filled out the other part, so now we're back to 51A. 51B we've already done, so 51B, strict application, well, let's do 51A. Strict application does or does not preclude the ability of the petitioner to pursue a use permitted in the district in which a property is located.
Does.
Natasha?
I think it's definitely, or I think that you can make the argument, and I will go with that it does preclude the ability to pursue a permitted use.
Leroy? Okay. And 5B is the same, strict application does result in significant economic injury to the.
Does.
Okay. All right, so now 5.2 is the sum of all the letters under it, so it does meet each of the criteria. And similarly, 5.1, the strict application of ordinance to the applicant's right would cause a practical difficulty. On the basis, so I'm on D on page 6, on the basis of the above findings of facts, conclusions of law, the Board of Appeals voted by a vote of 4 to grant the application for variance. Yes?
Correct.
Yes?
4, is that 404?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we today? May what?
21st?
2020.
Goodbye, May. Hey, not bad.
Been the windiest May I ever recall.
Yeah,
I don't mind being out in the rain or the snow or anything, the wind, day after day, it's.
yes.
I spent a lot of time in the fishing industry on the water, and those, that's all I've heard is complaints about the wind for the last month.
It's, I've been working at home, so I've been able to do a little more gardening. Yeah, I have one, I'm sure, if I, and the wind is worse than the cold.
I have to go to the management.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it dries out if you're gardening, and how dry is everything?
Oh, yeah, and it
Oh, we
just
had
breaks
some-
all your little plant, so we put up windbreaks, but it's,
We've had a lot of water, we've had a lot of rain, we were just saying today, coming by, Kastner, coming into that low area that brook feeds from. The water is still very high there, I mean, it's almost up to the road, and by this time, usually, it's receding.
You outdid me.
oh, yeah? Oh, cause my signature.
Signature.
I used to be in the school board and you have to sign the warrants and you have to sign like and that's
Right.
when my signature became back, it became a scribble. And, yeah,
So what are you doing these days?
well, I'm, working from home, and let's see, what are we working on right now? We're seeing when we're gonna get back to court, through, video conferencing.
Really?
Yeah, we'll see, picking juries and, well, we probably can't pick a jury for what, we're looking at the grand jury next, so hopefully being able to impanel, or we have a grand jury impaneled, we're looking at being able to keep the same grand jury and, you know, when we potentially be able to bring, gosh, I think it's 17, 18, 19 people, I can't remember, somewhere around that, into, you know, the room we usually use is about, probably twice this size. But, you know, this area is, you know, that median age is definitely over 60, so, and to tell you the truth, you know, I'm under 60, but I don't wanna get coronavirus, so, you know, that type of thing is what we're trying
Grand
to.
jury room, and is it still in the same place?
Well, the one I'm thinking about right now is like
Actually,
Rockland.
Yep.
The grand jury room is in the probate
You have
court
the,
in Lincoln
decision?
County, and
Oh,
that's,
no, it's on your desk.
You already decided?
we would use the
It's
superior
added.
court room.
Oh.
We would just go up to the superior court room. So, but then for a jury, I was talking to the justice about it, I don't think we can pick a jury. You can't put 150 people in that courtroom. You know, it's against fire code anyway when we have regular jury selection, so.
Yeah.
So those are the things we're kind of looking at right now is,
Being
because
a jury, can you have it in section, take so many sections?
that's what we're talking about, but it seems impractical in Lincoln
At
County.
this point,
But maybe, I mean, I think that would be the hope is maybe some people, it's just that if we don't have jury trial. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'd shake all your hands, but, that's a.
Don't take it all.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
your time.
So we'll see, but that's the kind of fun stuff that I just don't wanna wait for another year to have a jury trial, it'll be, you know, when we get back to where it'll be.
Are you on the board or are you heading up this? endeavor?
Oh, am I heading up the endeavor?
Yeah, or are you just on the board?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have some say in it, but the, you know, the judiciary's in charge. The judges are gonna, the Supreme Court's probably gonna make the big decision whether we can do it, and then each county courthouse, they'll, you know, I get some say probably, but
Yeah.
a couple of steps before it comes to me, so. But we'll see, I don't wanna put anyone's health in danger, yeah, but, you know, we also, you know, if we go a year and a half without a jury trial, we'll be all on.
That's a good.
We might end up trying to, you know, move the venue to like Knox County. I mean, who knows? We've never been through this before, so.
Yeah.
But that's about, you know, most of the time I'm just at home with my 5-year-old teaching kindergarten
Oh, really?
on Zoom, which is ridiculous. I mean, I love it. You know, her teacher's great.
You love that aspect of it, but not being able to.
Yeah, try to remember.
Motion to adjourn,
Yes, please.
so moved.